lost civilizations, and they were civilizations, and they existed well before patriarchy ever reared its ugly head. The figure on the right is Ishtar. She was a Babylonian goddess, but her predecessor had been Inanna in Sumer, which was a pre-Kurgan civilization. The interesting thing is that she's weaponized. She's got weapons. She's wearing her weapons, and she has a lion on a leash. The lady and the lion is an image, a votive image that goes back to the Paleolithic. There are paintings, there are bas reliefs of goddesses either flanked by one or two lions. Cybele in Anatolia, the great goddess, sits in a chariot drawn by two lions. Freya in Scandinavia rides a chariot pulled by two fierce cats. So there's something about this iconography that goes very, very, very far back in the human psyche. But as far as what civilizations were here, let's start with Anatolia, Turkey. Çatalhöyük was had a peak population of 10,000 people in 6,500 BCE. And this is an artist's representation because there's very little left at the site now. But they were built, the buildings on the left, you can see they're built very close together. There are no streets. That's because everybody traveled by rooftop. You can see the ladders leading up to the roofs, so that was how you moved around. But on the right, you can see that there's a fairly segmented use of space here. And the most interesting feature is what's in the subfloor. Those are bones, you can see the bottom part of that image. It's like a John Wayne Gacy burial, only not. This was where the bones of the ancestor would have been buried under the house, the eldest female ancestor, to protect everybody living in that unit because they were all her offspring. And again, plenty of evidence of goddess worship here. Vinca culture in Serbia. What you're seeing aren't just scratchings on stone. They are the earliest indication that we have so far of any kind of writing, ancient script. And this predates Sumerian cuneiform by 1,000 years. And all the ritual objects found here were goddess worship. But we get into things that are far more sophisticated than that with Sumer. 4,000 this was the Uruk period, the earliest period in Sumeria where they had a sophisticated civilization before the Kurgans arrived, before Gilgamesh arrived and their ilk, and the warring city-states period. A population of 90,000 in this town. At the time, it was the largest urban area in the world. They had a canal system, advances in technology, astronomy, agriculture. Their principal goddess was Inanna, and she is credited as the inventor of writing. Well, she didn't know anything about the Vinca, but still, you know, I'll give her credit for it. The city, in this artist representation, there really are, it's not heavily fortified because they weren't fighting anybody at that point, but as more Kurgans infiltrated the area, and Gilgamesh was a culture hero of the Kurgans, he got the bright idea of building city walls around 2700 BCE, which would have correlated with the first inroads of Kurgans into Mesopotamia. Oops, skipped one. The Indus Valley civilization is really interesting. Mohenjo-Daro in 2500 BCE was fairly spectacular. It had a population of 40,000, wells, drainage, bathing systems, part of a planned urban construction. They had an observatory, and they used calendar stones to try and figure out what their planting cycles were, fairly sophisticated astronomical observations. Mother goddess artifacts found everywhere, no indication of warfare, not fortified for defense. And the wall that you see in the lower right corner, when archaeologists first saw this, they went, aha, this is proof that they had to fortify. No, it proved that during the monsoon season, they needed a retaining wall against the floodwaters from the Indus River. So that's the only reason that was there. And this site was not really, it was taken over by Kurgans after it had been abandoned because desiccation also hit this region. So by 2500 BCE, it peaked, and by the time the Kurgans arrived in 1,500 years later, there wasn't too much left of it. Oops. Crete is probably the best known remaining example of matristic culture. It was an island, which is one of the reasons why it took the Kurgans so long to get there. Europe's oldest city, with a population of 100,000 at its peak. Aqueducts through gravity feed in the town, 3 separate water management systems, and the first known water flushing latrine. I'm fixated on the plumbing, you can tell this. But the reason for that is that level of urban planning indicates a high level of organization. And for the longest time, patriarchy was saying that, well, we brought cities and urban planning and aqueducts in Rome. No, you didn't. It was there a whole lot earlier than that. And Minoan Crete, 1500 was the beginning of the end. They had been flourishing for 1500 years before that. But between palace fires and the tidal wave after the earthquake on, what was it, on Thera, that sort of ruined the population and made them easy prey for the Dorians. But again, Knossos was not built on a hilltop. This is built in a valley for votive reasons, and it was not planned and built with fortifications of any kind. It's called a palace if you go and visit Crete, but that's not what it was. It was sort of an urban administrative center. So again, not warfare. And this one I'm just throwing in for fun, the Merowe pyramids in Kush, which is modern-day Sudan, Nubia. For the longest time, they were matrilineal all the way through Egypt's pharaonic period, and actually conquered Egypt in the 8th century BCE. And the stele on the right, the image on the right, is a Kandake, a ruling queen. The Romans, when they first came through there, they didn't know what to make of these ladies, and they thought their names were all Candace. So that's where the name Candace comes from, because they would call them a Candace, but it was a Kandake, and she was a queen, and she could trounce you if she wanted to. Now, surviving matricentric cultures all over the planet, usually in regionally isolated areas that would have been hard to conquer. In Africa, in Saharan Africa, the Tuareg. And what's really crazy about this, the figure on the right in blue is a man, figure on the left in black is a woman. But they converted to Islam some time ago, not at the point of a sword, but through some peaceful Arab traders. And because of their, and I would call it matriarchal culture, the men took on the veil. Men wear the veil and women don't. So, you know, they were going to oblige the rules, but they were just going to bend them a little. The second image is an Iroquois longhouse in North America, where, again, a clan mother would live with all her offspring, though if one of her children got married, the husband would come to live in her lodge, but divorce was a much easier business, because if the wife was dissatisfied with her husband, she'd pack up his belongings, set him outside the door, and he had to go home to mama, because that was divorce. It was plain and simple, no fault. Really, Iroquois culture survived until the inroad of French missionaries that really weakened the clan structure, the role of the clan mother, and at that point, converting them to Christianity also elevated patriarchy in the minds of the people, and that sort of was the beginning of the end of the Iroquois. The Mozuo still exist as a matriarchal culture in China, and geographically, again, they represent an area that would have been hard to conquer. They are in a very mountainous region of southwestern China, and it's a big tourist draw in China. They call it, what is the land of the women, or the empire of the women. They have what's called walking marriage there. Not like walking, but pneumonia. If a couple likes each other, when a girl reaches the point in time where she decides she wants a boyfriend, she's given a separate room in the family compound, and she invites him to spend the night. And they may have a very long-term ongoing relationship, but it's a walking marriage, because in the morning he walks back to his mother's house and he stays there. So, and it still exists. It's still going on. And Sumatra, the Minangkabau. Boy, when I was writing the book about this one, the typos on this name alone got me. It's on the island of it's in Sumatra. And what you see again is sort of comparable to the Iroquois longhouse. This house would be an ancestral residence where everybody in the extended family lives. And it is still considered the last true matriarchy on the planet. These people also converted to Islam, and it wasn't a military conquest. It was, again, a case of trading with friendly Arabs and being influenced by their ideology and going, this is okay. So the women do wear headscarves, but they are still pretty much in charge of everything. So where do we go from here?